name and good things happen. I don't know how that worked out, but we got Easton and Asher this morning. Is that right? Well, we got to think tall, okay? Just get up on that thing and stand on your tiptoes when you get up there. Y'all both going to lead us in a song? All right. Be sure to tell us the name of the song and let it go, and we'll go with you as best we can. All right? Y'all both helping us, Easton and Asher, to have a great beginning to our Bible class in here. And when you get up here, look at all these good-looking people. They love you, and they're very proud of you, and I am too. All right, who's first? Easton, come on up, buddy.
You guys so good. God is so good. God is so good. God is so good. Yes, so good to me. He answers prayer. He answers prayers. He answers prayers. He's so good to me.
Excellent. Good job. All right, Asher.
I will be leading As the Deer, number 71, first and second verse. As the deer pants for the water, so my soul thirsts for you. You alone are all to worship you. You alone are my strength, my shield. To you alone may my spirit yield. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. I want you more than gold or silver, only you can satisfy. You alone are the real joy giver and the apple of my eye. You alone are my strength, my shield. To you alone may my spirit yield. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you.
Excellent. Good job, Asher. Did y'all hear that? Y'all were thinking, well, Asher kind of sounds extra. Van, don't raise your hand. Did you hear me singing, Van? Oh, me. I apologize. I can make a joyful sound, but beyond that, I'm out of my league. Speaking of good news today, Tommy Beck is in the house with his nurse, and we've been praying for Tommy for a long time. I've got new glasses on the way, so I have to get some of these balcony folks in focus as I'm standing up, looking at the scriptures, looking back up, and I thought I saw a ghost for a time back there, a most lovely ghost, and Tommy next to the lovely, and so we're thankful. We've been praying for you and your team and your family for a long time, and you got to get to go back to MD Anderson and continue the saga. And we're thankful for you, thankful for for your progress, your attitude, and just what a wonderful, wonderful day to have you back here with us. Look, please, with me at Philippians chapter 2. I'd like to resume our study with you at verse 17. Paul has been challenging of them and us, as y'all remember from verse 14 and following, to work on our attitude and not be a complaining kind of person, an argumentative kind of person. And he basically kind of winds up that little paragraph by asking them, telling them and us to hold fast the word of life. And he says, so that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, so that I may not have run in vain or labored in vain. He's making it pretty personal with them, isn't he? He's saying, you know, I just kind of put it in our more modern vernacular, I'm hoping and praying that I didn't waste my time coming here to Philippi and writing to you and loving you and investing my heart and my time with you. And he's concerned about their relationship with Jesus. Hey, let me read this. I always get in text. If I don't read it now, this is from Alex Shirley. She says, I'm here at the hospital now. Rush looks a lot better. His vitals, coloring, all look good. He's still on oxygen. He passed this thing should say swallow test and was able to eat a little bit. Still no answers on the calls. And I'm going to be so thankful when Rush is able to be back with us. I'm going to tell you, and you probably, y'all can, if y'all read my emails, you can tell when Jeff's extra concerned. And when I saw Rush, and we went out there to the helicopter to say goodbye to him. I didn't even know if he'd make it onto the helicopter. I mean, he looked, and it was, so I'm anxious for him to get back in his spot up there real soon. He may literally be back up there next Sunday. I mean, that's just, that would be such a remarkable thing. He's a big, strong guy, as y'all know. And to get back to the book of Philippians and kind of combine all that, the book of Philippians is kind of the overriding idea here is to cherish our relationship with God and cherish our relationships with each other, and let's live in such a way as to help produce joy for those that we get to share the journey with. You know, let's be those kinds of people, and he's challenging them to step up and be that, so again, that I will not have wasted the investment. He's really poured a lot of himself into these people. And we often understandably call the book of Philippians an epistle of joy, but it is tinged with the sadness of knowing that not everybody that has been on the journey with Paul is still on the journey. And it's also in his mind that not everybody that's presently on the journey with me will always be on the journey with me. And that's one of the unsettling parts of our journey together, isn't it? As joyful as it is, we understand there's some that may not still be on the journey, and there's some that are journeying now that may not always be with us. And so we can identify at a core level with the heart of Paul as he goes through this. And then notice what he says in verse 17. This is so emotional. This is so powerful. He says, yes, and if I'm being poured out as a drink offering on the sacrifice. He's going back to it's almost there to his childhood days, isn't he? This is how I was raised. I was going to church, so to speak, going to the synagogue, and I was seeing that priest literally pour out the wine, the liquid onto the altar, and it was symbolizing, in a sense, what Jesus would do for us later on the cross. He drank the cup, but he also, in a sense, he poured out the cup of his own life for us. And Paul is using that imagery to say, I'm not going to be here much longer. I don't have many more breaths to take. I don't have many more days. And he's not complaining. He calls it a sacrifice. You can't have a sacrifice without a death. And the service of your faith. I did this to help you. I'm doing this to help you. What a great testimony that should be of our lives. We do what we do to bless somebody else. How's his attitude? I'm glad. Notice this. These words occur 4 times here. I'm glad and rejoice with you all for the same reason that you also be glad and rejoice with me. Glad, rejoice, glad, rejoice. I'm rejoicing, and I want you to rejoice with me. Heard about this preacher. He's talking about to a group of preachers, training them how to preach. And said, when you preach about heaven, your face should light up. You should smile. And he said, when you preach about hell, he said, your everyday face will do just fine. That is the challenge, isn't it? To not have an advertisement on our face that says life is such a great challenge. And life, we know life's a challenge, but it's such a great challenge that it is interfering with my ability to celebrate what is good, to celebrate who is good, who God has put into my heart and put into my life. Paul, with all his clutter, all his bruises and brokenness, he's still finding a way to rejoice, and he's giving credit to these people. And he wants them also to be rejoicing because he's a part of their lives. And that's the way it ought to be, that we try to be sources of encouragement and brightness. And yeah, there'll be times when we need to have those kind of gut check moments and heart to hearts that are unpleasant. But remember this, everything that is unpleasant here is temporary. It's temporary. It might not be I know it's not nearly as temporary as we desire it to be, but compared to eternity, like the pebble in the mountain analogy again this morning, this is a pebble, and we get to enjoy the mountain that lasts forever, that fills us up ever more than anything here could. You got comments or questions about any of that? Thoughts? All right, Bible scholars, look at verse 19. We want to be like Timothy, don't we? He said, but I trust in the Lord to send Timothy. I can count on Timothy. You have a Timothy in your life? Are you a Timothy for someone else? Timothy, to you shortly, that I also may be encouraged when I know your state. They didn't have Facebook, didn't have social media, couldn't just dial up somebody and ask, how are you doing? He needed a first-hand report. Needed somebody to go there and come back from there and say, here's how they're doing. In verse 20, what a great compliment of Timothy. For I have no one like-minded who will sincerely care for your state. And that's a great praise of Timothy. Paul had just been talking about having the mind of Christ, which is the mind of a servant. And he's saying, I have nobody like-minded like Timothy. So he's really elevating the praise, the appreciation he has for it basically says he's got the mind of Christ. Who would you say that about in your life? Who is that Timothy for you? And who are you a Timothy for? That you would say, that person is somebody I aspire to be more like. That's a person who inspires me, who helps my attitude to be better, who challenges me to grow in my faith. We got to have people like that in our posse, in our covey, as a bird hunter would say. Look at verse 21. This is a negative. For all seek their own. There is a tendency for that, isn't there? For all seek their own, not the things which are of Christ Jesus. This is a trivial illustration of that, but I heard somebody use it years ago or read it, and it kind of stuck with me. When you look at a group photo and you're in the group, where do you look at the photo? You look first at yourself, right? Maybe if you got cute grandkids, you might look at them first. But typically, we judge the merits of a picture by how we look. We got to retake that. Why? Well, because I'm looking, not because they're looking bad, but because we think we're looking bad. Or maybe we can look better. We tend to not just view a picture that way, but my country good too. I'm not necessarily, not to get too political. I'm not the biggest fan of the Kennedys, although my son Jordan had the audacity to name my most recent grandchild Kennedy. Baloo, don't shake your head no. I can see that. This isn't a TV. I can see you. And you shake your head no about she's so pretty and so sweet. But where I'm going with that is John F. Kennedy did say something we would sign our name to. Ask not what your country can do for you. Where'd that spirit go, right? Where'd that attitude go? But ask rather what you can do for your country. So Paul's saying we got people, they're asking, what can you do for me? What can you do for me? And if you can't do it for me, if you won't do it for me, then I'll try to find somebody that will. That's an immature view. That's an immature way to go through life. We were born that way, weren't we? Nobody came into this world sharing. Nobody came into the world and said, what can I do for you? It's give me my bottle, change my diaper, give me that toy. And if we didn't get it, we pitched a fit. And at some point, we have to outgrow that. And it becomes, we start to have the transition. And Paul is going to address that later when he says, I have learned in whatsoever state I am therewith to be content. Contentment, it does not seem to be one of these innate things that we just show up with. It's something that is developed by the experiences of life and our relationship with God, and maybe even like we studied about this morning, a better appreciation, understanding of the preciousness of grace that we've received. For all seek their own. Maybe the worst thing you could say about a people. Verse 22, but you know not just his character, but his proven character. He's been through it, and he stood up to it, and everybody knows about it. And look at this phrase, that as a son with his father, he served with me in the gospel. That tells us, doesn't it, that maybe Timothy was Paul's closest person. He was like a son to him. Do you have people that are not physical sons and daughters to you, but are in a sense sons and daughters to you? Or maybe to look at it from the other perspective, do you have people that are like mothers and fathers to you, even though they're not physically your mother or your father? These are people that we esteem. These are people that we cherish so much. Well, that's the relationship that Paul has with Timothy. And he depended on him. And Timothy did not let him down. And a lot of people had. And Paul references that when he says, for all seek their own. And because he is so reliable, like a son to me, verse 23, therefore I hope to send him at once, as I see how it goes with me. Now, what is he saying there? I'm having some issues. And he was. Remember, he's under arrest there in Rome. Things are not going good, and they're not looking so good. His attitude's great because the worst thing that happened to him, he'll be with Jesus. It might hurt getting to that point, but he knows what's on the other side of all this, and he will be with Jesus. And you notice the urgency here. He wants to send him at once. He wants to get this process started because it's going to take a lot of days for Timothy to get there. It's going to take a while for him to visit, assess the situation, and then head for home. I don't know if I properly appreciate the change that technology has. We understand there's a lot of negativity about technology. We get that. It can be addicting. It can give people a platform to demonstrate their rashness, brashness, immaturity. We all know that. But it can be such a good thing if used well and wisely by the people of God, which is what you are. One thing that it helps us with is the speed of communication. That can be a good thing or a bad thing. Put it in my book about gossip a long time ago. Something that's a quote from somebody wiser than me said that a lie can get halfway around the world while the truth is still putting its pants on, you know? I mean, it's amazing how fast bad information can spread. And it does seem like that bad information, even something that can be hurtful, is spread much more quickly than something good and noble and wonderful and accurate. But by and large, it seems to me that technology has been a blessing. Communication has been a blessing because in Paul's day, to send a letter, it gets there, it gets read, the response is sent back. Weeks, months, maybe even a change in season had to happen so a sea could open up to shipping again. When I first started going to Ukraine in 93, when I got home, man, my heart, was so invested in so many good people. And I'd write them. It takes 2 weeks back in those days for the letter to get there, if it got there, by ship. If they read it immediately, responded immediately, 2 more weeks. You do the math. That's a month after writing to even know, best case scenario, if they heard from me and even desired to communicate back with me. Now, in this class, I can literally pick up my phone and call and talk to them. And I can hear them. I can see them if I want to. They can see me. I can show them to all of you. I mean, what would the Apostle Paul and those zealous evangelizers of the first year, what would they do? What could they do with that kind of ability to communicate literally around the world with people? It's an amazing thing that Paul was not blessed with back in the day. Communication was a plodding, slow, torturous kind of thing. Verse 24, he said, but I trust in the Lord that I myself shall also come shortly. He wanted to see these people. He wanted to look them in the eye again. What's the best kind of interaction with those? Over the phone, only if it's unpleasant usually. But eyeball to eyeball, face to face, heart to heart, those are the best encounters that we have with people. And he wants to see. He knows he can write them. He knows he can hear from Timothy how things are. But if he can just look at them and they look at him, his old worn out self, the tears, that'd be such a blessing to him and to them. And he's in a praising mood now because he moves on from Timothy to another remarkable fella, Epaphroditus. Well, we've talked about him recently in some lessons from the pulpit. And we've talked about another similar fella, Onesiphorus. Yet I consider it necessary to send Epaphroditus. Who is he? He's my brother. He's my fellow worker and fellow soldier. That's getting real, isn't it, when you use in military terms? But your messenger and he who ministered to my need. Do you see all those labels for him? Brother, fellow worker, fellow soldier, your messenger, a minister, right? Since he was longing for you all and was distressed because you had heard that he was sick. You get that? He's such a good guy that when he hears that they've heard that he's sick, he's not concerned about his sickness. He's concerned about their anxiety because of it. He's like one of those folks who gets it, y'all don't worry about me, I'll be all right. You're stressing over nothing. By the way, doesn't this teach us something about miracles? I mean, these are wonderful people. Why aren't we getting them healed and let's just move on? Because even in Bible times, remember this, even in Bible times, miracles were scarce. They were rare. And, you know, we oftentimes preach and teach that back in the day, that miracles ceased whenever we got the full revelation of Scripture, when that which is perfect is come, to use the words of 1 Corinthians 13. But if you really study the Bible in depthly, as all of you are doing, you'll notice that there's no mention of miracles from basically the back half of the entire New Testament. There's a lot of mention of people being sick, isn't there? But why aren't they healed? Anybody? Does that mean that miracles, the ability to perform miracles, ceased much earlier than that we've always heard preachers tell us? Preachers told us the age of miracles ceased when the last letter was written. All right? But what about Epaphroditus? And there's nobody, we've already noticed this, there's nobody that Paul loved better than Timothy. Timothy had a stomach issue. What'd Paul say? Be healed? Take some wine mixed with water for medicinal purposes, for your stomach's sake. That's a question of the hour. Why wasn't Timothy healed? If miracles could still be performed. I think I don't know. It may be that miracles were not able to be performed at that point. That the point had been made from earlier miracles that these people are from God. And now we've got more of the word out there, the printed word, the written word, not the printed word, the written word, printing press, Gutenberg's thing didn't come to a long time after this, did it? So the written word and the repeated written word, it's just read and then shared with other people. The power of that was replacing the power of certain miracles that are being performed. But why wasn't Timothy healed? Why wasn't Epaphroditus miraculously healed? Since he was longing for you all, again, verse 26, just to set the stage of what we're looking at next, he was distressed about it, about their anxiety over hearing you were sick. And notice 27, for indeed he was sick almost unto death, who I described this morning. You know, we're familiar with those terms, aren't we? But God had mercy on him. And not only on him, but on me also. Is this a sad phrase? I think it is. Lest I should have sorrow upon sorrow. Why are we calling this an epistle of joy that's got a phrase in the middle of it like that? Sorrow upon sorrow. It just tells me Paul is a real man, isn't he? With real brokenness at times. He's like the fella that we all love and know, the lady that we all, maybe the fella, the lady that we are, who even as they're wiping tears from their eyes say, I know there's something better coming. I know there's a joy. It's down deep. It might be buried under a pile of sorrows, but it's a flickering flame down there. But Paul really did not want Epaphroditus. Isn't this ironic? He did not want him to die. Paul, who in our Bible recommended death more, if that can be a word to use for it? Who in the Bible best described death as a transition? Somebody told me this week, they talked about, they says location, 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 talking about the next life. And death is simply a separation from our soul of our body, and our soul goes to a better place and leaves a body that's groaning and hurting at times. And I am anyway, disappointed, but it's understandable my selfishness. Does this make sense to you? I have a decent concept of what heaven is like you do. But I want people to stay. I'm still at their bedside praying that they can stay with us. Quality of life's important and all that. But I do not like goodbyes. Don't like waiting. Don't like goodbyes. Right? And Paul, apparently he'd signed his name on that list. Doesn't like goodbyes either. He did not want to say goodbye to Epaphroditus. Paul, don't you know that for Epaphroditus to die would be gain? He knows that, but still he wants him to stay. You appreciate just how human again Paul is, how like us he really is. He called that death sorrow upon sorrow. Therefore, now he got better, right? I sent him more eagerly, that when you see him again, you may rejoice, and I may be less sorrowful. Now, can we attach his being less sorrowful with them seeing Epaphroditus again? Seems like it. What about them seeing Epaphroditus would cause Paul to have more joy? It's because most of us, we're so wired, aren't we, that when we know other people are enjoying something, we're not resentful of that. We're happy for them, and it helps us to enjoy it also. I mean, I'll give you a great example. No matter how hard-hearted any of us are, and at times maybe we're a little too in that direction we ought to be. Have you seen these videos at times of these warriors coming home to their family from battle, from being gone so long? And we don't know these people from Adam, as the saying goes in Bruton. And yet we are so emotionally invested in that video and those tears and that reunion. We're squalling with them. We don't know them. We're celebrating with them. We're tears of joy with these people. God has wired us. If there's anything right about us, when other people are having joy, we just jump on in emotionally, invest in that, and have joy ourselves. And I like the imagery of when these folks are coming home, because that's a preview of heaven, isn't it? Hugging Granny again. Hey, finally, hugging Dad, hugging Mom. It's a good thing when good things happen to other people. And Paul says it's going to make me glad. I can visualize it when Epaphroditus gets there and y'all see that he's healthy and you're relieved that our brother is safe. Notice this, and I know that's our bell. Let's read to the end of the chapter here. He says, verse 29, receive him therefore in the Lord with all gladness. Do they really need to be told that? That's probably an easy thing for them to do. And hold such men in esteem. Value these people like this. Because for the work of Christ, he came. What does this mean? For the work of Christ, he came close to death, not regarding his life, to supply what was lacking in your service to me. Something about Epaphroditus getting to Paul, doing what the Philippians were physically prohibited from doing, it affected our brother's health. Was it something about the ship ride? Was it something about persecution he endured? Did he get some kind of infection? Was he beat up by, we just don't know. But we know, according to the words of Paul, because Epaphroditus stepped up to do good, it hurt him physically. He almost died because of it. But somehow he prevailed. And we're celebrating that. This is an interesting chapter to me, interesting book. You got a final thought, comment, or question before we end?
He knew he had a lot of work to be done, so he was so intent on him doing that, getting him to do this work for him.
Absolutely. There was still a lot of field left to plow, wasn't there? There really was. In fact, a lot of it had just gotten off to a good start. And you would think of the chronology of the years. And so is true with us. There's still a lot of good that we get to do, like having a good afternoon and then coming back tonight, finishing our day. And by the way, think about, Eli mentioned that at the end kind of quickly about this monthly air-wide singing. The 3 churches hosting that, Cox Boulevard, then the following month is Florence Boulevard, then month of March, about 7:15 on that Sunday night, we get to host everybody over here for some good singing. Our singing this morning was on point. Look forward to more of the same tonight. Y'all have a great afternoon. Love y'all.